This is the hair that's going that way. I'm doubtful he had 3,500 grafts, very doubtful.
Well, it's absolutely night and day. Yeah, I now can tell by my past experience to this one, this is just sheer top professionalism. Yeah, there really is an art to this surgery compared to the last one, and I just want to tell everybody out there, you really have to be careful, because I don't want anybody to go through what I've had to go through.
Just tell us a little bit about the story that you went to, for people who don't know. So as I understand, you had this procedure. You were telling me off camera that you went for the consultation, and you didn't meet the doctor until the morning of the surgery.
No, I had 2 consultations at the clinic to make sure I was making the right decision. I was told by the senior consultant that I didn't have to meet the doctor until the day. He was so highly skilled. On the day he would shave my head, and he would know exactly where to put those hairs.
At what point did you realise that this had gone wrong for you in terms of like the procedure? Was it during the surgery itself, or was it when you got home?
No. The doctor that when he started drawing the hairline, he told me that drawing hairlines wasn't his speciality, which I find that difficult to understand, because prior to the consultations, I was told that my surgeon was so highly skilled, he would know exactly what he was doing. But the surgeon told me that drawing the hairline wasn't his strong points, and he laughed and said that it took him nearly an hour to get the hairline right. So every time he drew it on, it was quite clearly one side was much lower than the other. So all he kept saying is, "Don't worry, I'll lower," and he kept rubbing it out. And then he asked me to look in the mirror and say, "See how it is." And I said, "I'm not sure," because you keep my head. By this time, my forehead's really red. And I said to him, "You're the expert. What do you think?"
So it's really difficult for you to make an assessment as to how it looked at that time. Well, you just trusted the doctor that he was doing things right.
Yeah, he told me it was perfect.
Right. But this was a doctor that you were told had done thousands of procedures.
20 years experience.
20 years experience.
I didn't have to meet the doctor. I didn't have to see his before and after results. Yeah.
And were you actually told who the doctor was until
the
morning? So you didn't meet or know who he was. You couldn't do any research on him until you landed at the clinic on the morning of the procedure, and then you met him. You were told he had 20 years experience, but he then told you that he wasn't great at designing hairlines.
That's correct.
So that sort of doesn't ring true then, does it?
No.
Really? At what point did you realise that this is definitely crooked? And
after a couple of days after the surgery, I noticed the middle, there was a slant in the middle. And obviously, see the centre of the hairline, that should really be the lowest point. But when I turned my head, I could see this part, at the side, was almost the same as the middle. And then it seemed to, I noticed it, I just thought it looked terrible.
And I understand, Dr. Vara, just bringing you in, that there was, when you assessed Mark's hairline, there was lots of cobblestoning. Are you just able to explain to people what cobblestoning is and what the challenges were when it came to removing those grafts?
Yeah, so cobblestoning is a phenomenon where you get the skin healing around each graft in like a tent. So it creates a little bump around each hair, and it looks like a cobblestone like you see on the street. And the reason why patients will get that, especially in a hairline, for example, is the graft's not being implanted at the correct depth, leaving too much tissue in the graft. Those are the 2 most common reasons. And Mark had that throughout his entire hairline, and as a result, his whole skin looked like it was raised and it was like a ridge. And that was very unsightly. Even if he was to shave his hairline off, that was transplanted because he wanted to hide it, it would still leave a very noticeable ridge there, which was obviously very unsightly. Now, one of the fixes for that is actually removal of those grafts using surgery and removing them with that scar tissue, that cobblestoning around each individual hair follicle. And actually that's made such a massive difference to Mark.
So removing the hair and the surplus tissue can flatten the scalp out again.
Yeah, really complex surgery and something that we've only really found works for it over the last couple of years. And yeah, it's made a phenomenal difference to Mark. Mark was one of the worst cobblestoning cases that I've seen in our clinic over 10 years. And I thought it was going to be a challenge to remove it. We went through so many discussions, didn't we, as to how much cobblestoning we removed. Let's aim to try and get 30, 40, 50% improvement in the area, but it's astonishing to see much more after that first repair. It just shows us how much we can do with repair surgery, how much we are learning every single year when it comes to repairing cases, much like Mark. But certainly Mark was one of the worst cases that I've seen in a decade.
Because I think that this is something that patients are not that aware of that can happen. I think people will talk about, when they think about unnatural hairlines, they think about multiple grafts, the hairline being too low, too flat. Both of those things. Was there multiple grafts within Mark's hairline?
Correct, yeah. So Mark had obviously a wonky hairline. He had a lot of cobblestoning, but the third thing was that he had a lot of multi-unit follicular unit grafts across his hairline. So what we would deem as like 2, 3, 4 follicular units right at the front of his hairline. Obviously going to look really off and not natural. And we do a lot of research around repair work in our clinic. The most common reason patients will ask for repair is because it's not dense enough. But the second most common thing is angle, direction of the hair is off, and actually it just looks unsightly, which really alludes to the fact that there's too many multi-unit grafts in someone's hairline. And that it's reported in approximately 1 in 5 patients in our clinic.
Okay, so we had everything going on with this case in terms of, like, you had the cobblestoning, the angles and directions, the multiple grafts, the hairline being too low, and then you also had an overharvested donor area in a patch on Mark's right-hand side as well.
Correct.
Which he then repaired, which is something I'm seeing a little bit more of now, where patients are having grafts. So this was also not just a repair of the hairline, it was also a repair of the donor area. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, so he had, throughout his donor area, had most of his donor hair extracted from his centre and to his right parietal region. This was particularly quite overharvested, even at longer hair lengths. So in his first procedure, we took out 840 across his hairline, relocated just shy of 500 grafts into his hairline. But then,
spin Mark around just so I can compare the other side.
I'm just taking around this way. Turn your head to your right-hand side. So they'd taken out less in his left parietal than he had done on his right. So they'd clearly just taken out a lot and then sort of left his left donor, which happens, but the skew on the harvesting from his right side was too much, left noticeable scarring, which we repaired partially in his first stage. And unfortunately, he's still going to have some level of overharvesting in the area that he'll need S&P to correct, because actually we can't implant any more hair into that zone. We won't have enough from his hairline to go into there.
And the plan for today then is just to take out the remaining sort of around about 10% that were purposefully left because you couldn't harvest all of those grafts. And I've seen the immediate post-op photographs from the first procedure. You really did do the heavy lifting in terms of the bulk of the removal, but you can't capture everything in that one procedure. So today is a bit of finessing, taking out the remaining grafts, and then you're going to move them further back to create a bit more irregularity. Is that the
correct?
Plan?
Yeah. So we've got 10% left across his hairline that we're going to need to remove today. You can't remove all the hairs in one sitting of surgery. You'll always have some hairs that are just planted too close to each other. When you try and take out one of them, you're going to have to leave the other, otherwise you'll over-traumatize the skin. So that is what we're left with currently. We're going to recycle those hairs back into the hairline, add a bit more feathered appearance to across his hairline. Mark's hairline is great already right now in terms of where the bulk of the hair and the new hairline is. We just need to add a bit more finesse, and you'll see the purple line that I've drawn. That's going to be, that's his existing hairline. We're going to work into some of those areas across the first ½ centimetre to add a bit more density, add a bit more finesse. It might require us to take an extra couple of 100 grafts in the back if required, but we're going to try and minimise the amount of hair that we actually need to take out from his compromised donor area.
So at what point did you contact the previous clinic to make them aware that you were unhappy with the work?
Yeah, well, I contacted them right away, saying that I had a few issues that I was unhappy with, and they just explained to me that I would have to wait until everything heals before they could do anything about it.
Okay. And did you go back and see them in person then for a follow-up appointment?
Yeah, I went back 6 months later. Well, it wasn't actually quite as much as 6 months. And they said, yeah, everything's fine. They were prepared to do another surgery to bring it down.
This was the unevenness.
Yeah.
One side was lower, so they were going to correct that by offering another, discounted or free of charge procedure?
No, they were going to do it free of charge.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I explained to them that I wasn't happy bringing the hairline right down to the muscle because it's hitting the muscle on this side, and then there's a slant in the middle. Basically, they were just going to bring it right down to my frown line.
Right, to match the your right hand side. Yeah. Right.
And as far as the overharvesting is concerned, they said that was some shock loss that will grow back, no problem, which it didn't.
Okay. And you obviously you didn't take them up on the offer of the second procedure.
I said I wanted some of the hairs removed from this side, and but they said they couldn't do that. They couldn't do that repair for me. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that's when you then started looking at other clinics to be able to help you repair this, and that's how you found.
Yeah, well, I went to several clinics. Yeah, their findings. They told me that they started to explain about cobblestoning and overharvesting and ridging. I also had a consultation with another surgeon in Glasgow. They just kept on saying the same things. That it's not good work.
And it was 12 months ago, approximately, that you had the first repair?
First repair, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And how has that changed your life in terms of...
I mean, the first repair in itself has, it's made a dramatic difference because I was so self-conscious. I just grew my original hair down to cover up the mess. Yeah, and I was wearing hats a lot, and I don't normally wear hats. So yeah, it's made a dramatic difference.
Okay.
Even one, I didn't think it, I thought it would take several to fix, but after one, it made a dramatic difference.
I think because looking at the photographs, Dr. Vara was able to achieve so much in that one procedure, whereas I think a number of surgeons may have said, okay, we're going to need two just to perhaps get to where you are today and then a finesse. So I think it's a phenomenal change. And hopefully after today, you're going to be back on your way again, and you can put all of this nightmare behind you.
I'm pretty sure I will be, yeah, I will be.
Absolutely.
Good.
Okay, I'm going to be following your procedure today, taking some video and some photographs, and perhaps then we'll catch up with you quickly afterwards just to see how it's all gone.
Excellent, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Good.
This is the hair that's going that way.
Yeah, I just about to say that you're just having to move yourself around now, aren't you?
Yeah.
How are the grafts coming out? The different angles you've got to contort your body to get to them.
Exactly. Yeah. So now that we're going through and taking out the hair and the hairline, there's some hairs that are growing forwards, which is a bit more straightforward for me to take out, and then. Because this is now a third operation across Mark's hairline, there's quite a lot of scarring underneath his skin. which attaches the grafts quite strongly down to his scalp. So having to cut to different depths to enable those grafts to come out. And the most tricky thing is the hairs are growing in all sorts of different angles and directions because of his first procedure. And yes, some of them go forwards and some of them kind of go left or right. And then some of them will go almost at a completely odd angle, almost growing at me. So I'm going to have to literally go round this way, and I'm going to have to extract it because it's growing like that.
So it's growing back on itself then?
Yeah.
Towards Mark's crown?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just shows to you how the previous clinic implanted his hair. And it's, yeah, it just gives you a telltale sign of how poor the implantation was, how poor the quality was of the hairs that they were implanting back into the hairline and how they were planning it. You see they are coming out quite nicely. Okay, so the grafts that are coming out are going to be viable to be reused then? Yeah, yeah. They are attached to a lot of scarred tissue in his scalp. So some of them are coming with a fair amount of scar tissue around them.
Okay.
But they should be viable for reimplantation.
So will they have to be trimmed then, the grafts that come out? Or?
I'm going to try and leave them as is.
Okay.
I don't want to trim them too much. They've gone through so much trauma already.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and leave them untouched as much as possible, ultimately.
So in the hairline here, we can see that you've used tumescence.
Yeah, we
adrenaline,
have.
Yeah, just to enlarge the area.
Correct. So for a number of reasons, you want to reduce the amount of blood supply to the area to enable easier surgery.
Easier vision, yeah.
But the second thing is it helps to inflate the scalp, increasing the distance between each follicular unit. And thereby allowing me to punch in between them. So if they're very close to each other, by inflating the scalp, they come out away from each other and allows me to take them all out individually.
Allows you to take the adjacent ones, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so it's a bit like a balloon effect, isn't it?
Correct,
really?
yeah, precisely that, yeah. But we've taken out so far, well, I've punched 134. Not all of those hairs that I punched are going to be viable for surgery or going to come out, but so far, pretty healthy yield of the extraction, so going to plan. I'm
quite interested to know when you're punching out these existing grafts, are they placed, because you mentioned that there was cobblestoning, so are they quite shallow then in terms of where they've been placed?
Some of them are.
Right.
Some of them are very deeply placed as well.
So it's a variety.
But most of them are shallow placed. The tricky thing is navigating the scarring underneath the skin surface now, because they're quite adhered to the scalp, having gone through 2 previous surgeries. Having to cut a bit deeper than I did last time. Okay. Just to release those grafts from the surrounding tissue. But yeah, there is certainly less cobblestone. I can even see that on my loops than before. And so the previous surgeries helped fix that a lot. But there's still some, mainly worse on the right-hand side, and I've actually removed that scar tissue, so it should be a lot better now. Following this procedure.
So the side that you're working on now had the worst amount of cobblestone.
This side, yeah. First procedure, all of it was quite cobblestoned, but then after that initial repair, it was just this little corner that was still remaining. So we've just taken out quite a lot of that scar tissue from there, which is going to help him over the long run. These hairs are now growing. Touched this way. And then starting to swerve in all directions. Now, you can see how complex, constantly having to change direction and the angle of my punch for every single hair.
And this is why I think when we were talking was that these type of repair cases take that much longer.
Yeah.
In order to, they're not like extracting a normal graft, from a virgin donor area. No, absolutely not. And
Mark's is quite complex, and that every single hair that I'm extracting is very uniquely different in an adjacent follicle, whereas in the donor area, it's not always the case that is. And actually, across donor area, we'll get sections where a lot of the hairs can be quite similar in terms of depth, in terms of direction.
Yeah.
But these every single hair I'm having to take out, every single one is changing in its parameter, its depth, its angle, its direction, and having to adjust that according to each individual hair. Now it requires skill, obviously it requires correct equipment. So we're using the Wow Duo device. I've constantly changing how powerful my cut is around each hair follicle. So I'm adjusting my cutting to cater for each follicle to ensure it reduces the amount of damage each follicle goes throughout this process. The chief aim is obviously to recycle as much of those hairs as possible so we don't have to dive into Mark's donor hair again. So each of these is really precious. We want to try and minimise the trauma that each one goes throughout this process.
Yeah, of course, but it must be also very challenging because if they're all placed at different depths as well, you've got to be able to try to determine that when you're making your cut.
Correct, yeah. So that is no exacting science with that. Mark's native hair is about 5 millimeters in depth, but some of the hair I'm extracting right now is so short because of a number of reasons and quite complex ones. But a lot of the depth control and the depth feel of how to cut and the depth at which you need to cut these hairs out is based upon the feel, the haptic feedback that this machine and my hand is giving to my brain to understand what depth actually is optimal for those grafts to come out. So you'll see it's one of those grafts that's come out. This is another. There's another graft that's come out. You see there's quite long and there's a very short one there as well. So they're very variable in their morphology. Another. Quite variable in terms of the length.
And what size punch are you using?
Using a 1 millimeter Wow Duo size, a Wow punch.
Yeah. With the tumescence, it makes the wound extraction look very small, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a 1 millimeter punch from a Wow punch is actually very accurate. It's equivalent to many other manufacturers' smaller punch sizes, and the whole debate around punch size is tinged with the fact that many manufacturers don't obviously measure their punches correctly and to the correct size, but Wow, the DeVoy instruments do, and they're very transparent and they're very ethical in how they manufacture and sell their punches. But 1 millimeter punch is required for Mark. We want to extract those follicular units intact. We want to transect or minimize the amount of transection we go through this phase, and we want to take out scar tissue as well. So this size punch is perfect for him. Okay. Normally, when it comes to my repair cases, I'll choose a selection of different punch sizes to account for different units and bundle sizes and different hair characteristics. But from Mark, you will just need this one singular punch.
Excellent, thank you. Can I just ask, as you're obviously pulling the grafts out now, as to how tethered they are? Are they coming out easily, or challenges?
So there are challenges, yeah. So some of the grafts are very tethered. Some of them are not so tethered, so that one was fine. And some are very, very tethered down to the skin. Finding it more tethered than last time, just purely because of the scarring that he's had across now 2 procedures across his hairline. But you can see right now I'm coming across an area where they're not so tethered, and then suddenly I'm getting into an area where they are. So it's very variable across the scalp. This one's quite tethered into the scalp. You can see I have to.
And what sort of numbers are we up to in terms of extractions so far?
So I've punched 348.
Okay.
So we'll end up taking potentially just shy of 400 today, but we'll have to see what their grafts are like under the microscope. Not all of those grafts are going to be viable for transplantation.
So once those grafts have been assessed under magnification, you'll then have an idea as to whether you need to take any additional grafts from the donor area.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of game plan decision then, really.
Exactly, yeah. This is decision making that we make during the surgery itself.
Yeah.
Requires quite careful consent during the morning to ensure that Mark is aligned with anything we make as a decision during the day. So not having to encumber him with quite difficult surgical decisions during the process of surgery when he wants to just relax and we can just operate. So really careful planning, foresight, consent planning and processes really enable us to operate with a bit more freedom, but well within safety limits for Mark and what he's consented for previously. Again, this boils down to us having done this numerous times, experience, and just the processes that we have in our clinic and a dedicated surgeon to patient care.
So you were just measuring the blade size?
Correct, yeah. So I've just got 2 blades, one here in my hand and one on the sterile trolley. One is 0.9 and 1.7 millimeter size. Different size blades, different shaped blades, but just measuring according to the length of the grafts that are coming out. Some grafts are very short, like 2 millimeters. Some grafts are as long as 5 millimeters. So I'm going to need to cut to a depth that accommodates for all of them.
Okay.
So I measure both blades to ensure that they're at the depth.
So all of the extraction of the old grafts are now done, and how many did you say? 200 and
230 roughly,
230
yeah.
approximately.
So they've come out. We're going to have to still count them. We're going to inspect them under a microscope and see whether they're still viable for reimplantation back into Mark's hairline.
Okay.
And well, create the scissors for him. I'm predicting about 230.
Okay, so now the plan is to make the incisions for the hairline. You're going to then, depending on the amount of incisions that you need, you're going to then work out what grafts are viable and then whether you need to extract some more grafts.
From the donor area, correct.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, spot on.
Lovely. I'm very interested to see, I think the viewers would like to see what these grafts look like under high magnification, and I'm particularly interested to see a transected graft as well, and you talk us through what we're seeing on the screen here, please.
So you'll see the grafts here, guys. Shannon's kindly just organising them according to the size, the groupings. Now, Mark's hair we extracted, not all of those hairs are going to come out healthy enough for recycling and reimplantation. A lot of the hairs have a lot of scar tissue around them, so some of this extra tissue around each graft is sometimes, most often actually, not ever seen in patients with normal donor hair. And you'll see some of the hairs are quite short, some of them are quite long, and that's because of the previous trauma to those grafts earlier, and actually those hairs have gone through a bit of a shock and they've changed their morphology quite substantially. And I was taking those hairs out, a lot of those hairs were not uniform in their length and very variable. Some of those grafts are so short they're almost hidden by some of the skin right at the top of each graft, which is quite interesting. And you'll see a very short graft there, very short graft there, and a longer graft there. Now, because of the scar tissue that Mark had underneath his hairline, some of those grafts did a bit of a split underneath the skin surface, and it's very difficult to take those hairs out, and you can often damage them in the process of doing so. What we'll show you is a transected graft on the screen in a moment, which will show you how those hairs have grown that way.
One thing that we were just talking about was that Mark's previous clinic, he paid for and supposedly had 3,500 grafts to a very small area of the hairline. When you looked at the number of grafts in terms of how many you had to remove, what was your estimation of the number of grafts that he may have actually received roughly?
Good question. I'm doubtful he had 3,500 grafts, very doubtful. I suspect they transplanted anything between 1,500 and 2,000 grafts.
Okay.
And looking at his donor area, they've definitely attempted to take out quite a fair amount, and they've skewed the extraction over one side of his donor area more than the other, which is why he's been overharvested. But it doesn't look like they've tried to take out 3,500 grafts, and it certainly doesn't look like 3,500 grafts have been implanted into his hairline.
Okay. And this is quite a common trap for patients, isn't it, that they fall into? Is it they're over-quoted in terms of numbers of grafts, so that they feel the relative value is better with that clinic, because when they're looking at, I think Mark said he paid 3,000, but then they charged him for medications and bandages and shampoos that he kind of needed really for that first week after surgery. For his point of view, he was thinking he was paying, getting great value for money for the number of grafts, but he clearly didn't receive that.
Yeah, it's common practice, and it's common now, unfortunately, in the hair transplant market, whereby things are being increasingly commoditized, and as a result, patients are lured into thinking that they need a lot of grafts for quite a cheap cost, whereby they've been told they need 4,000, 5,000. Sometimes they get quoted unlimited grafts for a very, very low price point. And for a consumer, they believe they're getting a deal there. They're getting a huge amount of grafts for quite a low price, and so they jump at that opportunity. And that is rife amongst UK and abroad clinics. But then actually, they go to those clinics, they often transplant a lot less, and then the patients none the wiser don't get told actually the truthful number of grafts that get transplanted. So sadly, that is common practice, and we see a lot of that in our clinic from patients who have gone elsewhere.
And the other thing also that was to discuss is that the donor area. So you believe in looking at the donor area under magnification that more grafts were taken than were actually implanted.
Correct.
So that would lead to a high rate of transection, grafts that just were wasted.
Yeah, so there's two reasons. So two potential scenarios here. Yeah. They've either tried to take out a certain number of grafts but struggled, and so they've really just attempted numerous times to do that and damaged a lot of his donor zone. Or they've taken out 3,500 grafts and they've only implanted what they needed and they threw away the remaining ones, which is, in my opinion, the worst case scenario, because those grafts would have been so precious for Mark in the future if he needed surgery again. I suspect his surgeon or his previous clinic really struggled to take his hair out, potentially weren't experienced in dealing with his hair type. But truthfully speaking, his hair type is quite straightforward. It would have been pretty easy and run-of-the-mill surgery for a case like that being performed in our clinic. So it's sad to see and sad to hear about.
Thankfully for Mark, he's got a great head of hair backing up his hairline. So although these grafts were precious, in his situation, he was fortunate that they weren't quite as precious for him. But if somebody else was, had aggressive thinning, this would have been devastating. Yeah,
it would have been it's already an egregious result. But it would have been even worse if he was, for example, in his early 20s, had that hairline brought down really low and then had his donor area over-harvested at the same time. He would have been a real tight spot for looking normal in the future. And it's not a story that we haven't heard of before and seen in our clinic. We've had 20-year-olds who've had that done to them, and they are really tricky repair cases ultimately, and they're going to have trouble as they go older. They'll need to have a combination of surgery as well as SMP and other sort of medical therapies to help
body hair.
And body hair, beard hair, to give them the illusion of having hair over the long term that they are proud to wear.
Okay. I'm really keen to see what transected grafts look like under magnification, because here at the treatment rooms, you record every transaction, every partial transaction, and obviously you record all your graft breakdowns as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or sort of.
So the first thing is that we always go into surgery and we ensure we try and minimize transection. Obviously, you want to minimize that as much as possible.
Yeah.
There's so many different definitions of transections. At a very high level and a gross level, it's partial and total transections. Partial is when you just damage just half of a follicle. Total is when you damage the entire follicle. A normal transplant surgery, you want to minimize both those values. In repair surgery, it's very difficult. And these are examples. So you've got 2 follicles there that have been totally transected. And then you've got 1 follicle here which is intact. We'll pause on that one for the time being and just talk about these 2. So you've got these 2 follicles that would have grown down here, and then these ones that would have grown here and here. You'll see they're done splits, and actually the reason is because of the way that was implanted. Those hairs were traumatized so they're going in different directions. So one was going this way, one was going this way. And then when it came to surgery, there was a lot of scarring at this base in his follicles that pulled his hair and also in odd directions. So when it came to cutting down, I was trying to take out one of those both those follicles, but actually we're both going in opposite directions, and I was unable to take both of them.
Okay.
Same thing here. So one of these, they're both going relatively the same direction, but one of these ones was doing his splits this way, one of them was just going downwards this way, and I was trying to take out both of them and trying to take out from this angle, but unfortunately I was unable to capture this follicle. But this follicle looks like it's intact underneath this skin layer here.
Okay.
So I've got a partial here, total transection here, because both those follicles are damaged, and only one of these follicles is damaged here.
So the single hair one you will be able to use?
Yep, we'll be able to use that follicle there, and the strong suspicion is that that will grow.
Okay.
And that's really important. We want to make sure that we want to give every little chance for those hairs to grow once they've been taken out ultimately, and recycle as much as possible. Here just shows you the challenge. So you can see there's a hair growing out on top of the skin here, growing in this angle, but underneath the skin, because of the scarring underneath the skin, you'll see how it curls completely in the opposite direction. That is what we're having to contend with throughout Mark's hairline. And so that is an intact follicle that we're able to reimplant back into another part of Mark's hair. But just, a really good glimpse into what a total and a partial transection looks like, the challenges of repair hair transplant surgery, the challenges of scar tissue underneath someone's scalp. And this is something that we've got a huge amount of experience in. We try and minimize trauma to a hair follicle, but sometimes these things are very much unavoidable. But it's important to look at things under a microscope. On first glance, this follicle and this follicle, without looking under a microscope, would look like they wouldn't be deemed appropriate for recycling or transplantation, but they very much are with follicles that are healthy enough to grow.
Okay. And this highlights the importance of assessing grafts under magnification to their viability, because otherwise these grafts could have been transplanted into the hairline and you wouldn't have the growth, so you'd end up with a poor yield into the hairline potentially if there was lots of these.
Yeah.
So that's
absolutely, yes. So that feedback's important. So often ask my team how we doing in terms of the follicles and numbers of follicles per graft as well. Understand that feedback from my microscope, my technician team, so I can adjust any parameters necessary when I'm extracting hair. So that two-way communication is really important. It's almost like a hand and glove team that we have here that enable that to be the case. But yeah, you're very right. If we didn't have that inspection, that level of detail here, we wouldn't know what we're implanting back into a hairline. We wouldn't be able to adjust the extraction parameters here and give us a better chance of getting even better quality grafts coming out the scalp.
Okay, and just in terms of the progress where we are in terms of Mark's surgery?
Yeah, so we've just extracted all of his hairline. I've made all the incisions across his new hairline, and we're just waiting for the final count to come back from my team so that we know exactly how many hairs we're putting back into his hairline. Okay. We're about the halfway stage, and we're about to finish surgery once we've got this count and we put him back in.
Yeah. Just how was the experience today, perhaps compared to your first repair?
Well, I felt much more reassured. I wasn't nervous at all. I knew right at the beginning, when I entered the operating room at the first one, and I seen like the microscopes and everything set out the way it was, like a proper operating theatre, compared to the last clinic. I was quite reassured then. So coming back a second time, I thought, yeah, this is fine. Yeah.
Well, you've met everyone, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've met the doctor. You know the procedure. You know what's involved. And I understand. I think it was 283 grafts were extracted, and then they were moved further back. So, in terms of the recovery, I think patients are obviously quite keen to understand about what you need to do now for the next few days. So have you got any tips at all from that you learned from the recovery last time?
Just follow the instructions.
Yeah.
It's quite straightforward. You just spray the wounds every half an hour or so.
Okay. So you're spraying continuously to start off with.
Sleep in an upright position. Although I don't have I don't have any surgery at the back now. Just be really, really careful. Wait a week before you wash your hair. Well, not wash it, but the first stages of washing is just a rinse, and then gradually move on to baby shampoo.
Just looking back, if you could go back in time, what would you do differently to before you had that first procedure?
Well, my research as such was comparing Turkey to the UK. I didn't realise that some of the things that go on in other countries go on in this country. Now I know a real hair transplant surgeon. I know about the consultation. You must have it with the surgeon. He has a surgical plan. And as far as the surgery is concerned, the technicians are assistants, whereas these other clinics, it's a case of, there's a doctor there, he's GMC registered, which doesn't really mean that much in this industry. And then the technicians, it's them that's doing all the work, but they're not inspecting the grafts.
So that was part of the issue before, is that I think you were saying that you didn't meet the surgeon until the morning of the procedure.
That's right. I was assured. I had 2 consultations with the senior consultant, and he said, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I was like, what about the surgeon? I need to meet him. Yeah. I need to look at his befores and afters. And he laughed and said, come on, you're in safe hands, you're in your own country, you're not in Turkey. Wow. Yeah.
Okay, so basically he leaned on the fact that you were in the UK, therefore you're going to be fine because GMC registered, nothing to worry about. So he kind of like dismissed your request for asking to know firstly who the surgeon was, to see any results from that particular surgeon. You know, how can I avoid making a similar mistake to perhaps Mark did?
Your research must be a doctor that does hair restoration surgery. That's his profession. The doctor that, once I got to find out who the doctor that performed my surgery in the last clinic, once I found out who he was, he's one of these multi-talented. He does anything and everything.
Okay.
He's not specifically. He
does a little bit of cosmetics, and he does a little bit of different types of surgery.
All sorts.
He's not a specialist in terms of when it comes to hair transplantation.
Completely. Okay. He's, as far as the consultant's concerned, he told me that he was highly skilled in hair restoration surgery, and well, he's not.
Yeah. No. Okay. So you would really make sure that the anyone considering hair transplant surgeon would find a specialist who only does hair transplants day in, day out, and also make sure that you meet the surgeon and that you research the surgeon. And I think that's really good advice, because I think that when you are looking for a hair transplant surgeon, find somebody whose name is on the door, or that you can research their results. Any particular warning signs that looking back now, when you visited that clinic and you met that patient of ours or whoever it was, owner of the clinic, any sort of warning signs that you could now look back in hindsight and think of?
Well, personally, I think you should never have a consultation with somebody that's not a surgeon. It must be a surgeon, the person that's going to carry out the operation. A senior consultant. I mean, what does that sound like? It sounds like a doctor.
I think consulting is misleading, isn't it? Really,
Absolutely.
when these people call themselves, senior consultant, because in a hospital environment that sounds like someone very medical, but obviously in your case it wasn't.
And as far as the consultations are concerned, he said we're going to do this, we'll do that, and then I turned up on the day. As I say, I didn't meet the surgeon until the day of surgery, and the surgeon hasn't got a clue what I was talking about.
Right.
I had to basically tell the surgeon what my surgical plan was.
Okay, so it was like starting again. It was like he'd not had any privy information to your plan that you discussed with this other person.
Not only that, English was not his first language.
Right.
So there was a massive language barrier there as well.
Okay. And how long, I think he said he took a long time to design the hairline because he just couldn't get it right. It wasn't that he was trying to be particularly fussy about it, but the issue that you had was that your hairline was much lower on one side, and that was right by your forehead muscle, wasn't it?
Every time he drew the hairline on, it was distinctively lower on one side than the other, and I kept pointing that out to him. The way he drew the hairline on as well, I mean, this doctor was over 6 foot tall, and he was standing above me, behind me, and I was holding a mirror. It wasn't until the final hairline that he drew on it, I questioned him. You're asking me if this is okay, but you're the expert, what do you think? And as I said before, but this time he'd made several attempts at it, and my head was really red. And I said, I really can't tell now. And his final words were, it's perfect.
Okay. And what was it like living with the hairline after the first surgery that you had? I mean, have you got any personal experiences that you can share about how it made you feel?
It gave me the anxiety and the depression that it created was unbelievable. I was so self-conscious. All I wanted to do was grow my natural hair and cover it up or wear a hat. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's a range of emotions that you go through as a repair patient. I mean, sometimes people blame themselves. Other times they get angry with the people that were involved in the procedure. What was your feelings about it?
Well, I blame them for everything.
Right.
Yeah. The lies. It's just an absolute con. They're just out to make money fast, quick.
And the other thing that we spoke about was earlier on was price. And you had a really good warning to, now you've experienced surgery correctly on 2 occasions, unfortunately, because it's taken 2 procedures, is that you had quite a good warning in terms of because you paid very small amount of money and you were promised X amount of grafts, a lot of grafts, way more than what you needed.
Yeah.
So you were sort of upsold this bigger procedure, which in terms made it look like fantastic value. But again, you didn't get those number of grafts. So have you got any sort of warnings about people who are looking at cheap surgery?
A hair transplant is not about getting a bargain amount of grafts. It's about getting what you need. Yeah. But, so a hair transplant at £3,000, I'm getting 3,000 plus grafts, so it's less than £1 a graft. That's not the right way. It's a case of the doctor decides what you need, because you might need more in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, donor preservation, donor management is so important. You know, thankfully for you, I was talking to Dr. Vara during the procedure that you've got a great head of hair backing up, but we, you know, some of your donor area would have been wasted, either transected on extraction, or maybe even discarded as not required. So, you know, because we don't know the actual number of grafts that you had, but it certainly was way less than 3,500. So in terms of like, for you've ended up obviously having to have 2 procedures to fix this one surgery that you had, but you would have gone through all those emotions of living with this poor transplant. And just tell us a little bit about some of the problems that you were aware of when you looked in the mirror at your hairline.
Just that it was much worse after the surgery than it was before.
Okay, so if you could go back in time, would you, I mean, I know the answer to this one, I'm sure, but like, yeah, they left you in, you know, if you could go back and say you obviously wouldn't have had the procedure and you would have just lived with a slightly higher hairline, I suspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked horrendous.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrendous. Total disfigurement as far as I'm concerned.
And I think this is the lesson, is that people don't really fully understand is that, you know, one bad procedure can have such a knock-on effect.
Yeah.
And it's not just on the way you look, it's on your mental health, it's how you live your life, and it becomes so much more difficult to fix. And obviously it's been great that you've been able to find the treatment rooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. They've definitely given me my life back. I can't thank Dr. Vara and his team enough.
No, we've seen that today. As I say, how grateful you've been, obviously, because I think you've provided them with some lovely gifts for the whole of the team.
He thoroughly deserves it.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. I'm going to look forward to seeing
I'll definitely
how your results come through, and I think you're going to document them on the forums.